Thank you for coming. Wow, it's like a time machine looking at that stuff, isn't it? Wonderful to be here in Perth. 5 years in Australia. I never made it to Western Australia. Finally, my wife let me in the house to do it, so thank you. Thank you for coming and being here. My name is Ben Browder. I did a little show called Farscape, the best, I think the best science fiction show in the world, but certainly the best one ever shot in Australia. That's right. Aussie made, Aussie produced, Aussie acted, Farscape. I was also in Stargate, a little bit of Doctor Who, a little bit of Chuck. Someone reminded me today I was in Chuck. I went, did I do Chuck? Oh, yeah, I did Chuck. Arrow. Since the last time I was in Australia, I have, let's see, what have I done lately? I did another episode of CSI, which is coming out. And I directed a movie for the first time. I did a little film called Bad Kids Go to Hell, but it's to hell. And so I spent the last 9-10 months working for about 7 cents an hour doing that. But it's going to be good. It's actually going to be good. We're in post-production now doing VFX and composing stuff, and I'll just keep rattling on until everybody gets seated. So if you turn around, you'll see them. That's the latecomers. There's a couple seats here in the front. Some room between those people there. 3 seats over here if you're looking for some. So anyway, how much time do we have together for this? Anybody know? How long? Just 45. Wow, we just filled up 15 of it just getting people seated. So, is everybody in? Right. Close the doors. Extinguish all smoking materials. Right. And I'll just take questions, I guess. Yes.
Just go over here. We just got the questions over here, sorry.
Yes.
Yes, Platinum, yeah. Thank you.
Which is kind of like the most iconic English show, and then being in Stargate, which is American. How do you feel about the sort of looking at those different areas of like the cultural context? You see Australia versus England versus the American show.
Versus
Stargate.
the American shows.
Yeah.
Okay, so her statement first was that Farscape is one of the great sci-fi series because it has an Australian influence, which it does, and then followed on with, and I was also in a bit of Doctor Who, which is an iconic English series, and I did Stargate, which is an iconic American series, even though it was shot in Canada. So what do I think is the difference between, or the similarities between working in those? First off, I went to drama school in England. And I'm married to a Pom. It's true. Yeah, I'm married to an English girl. So I have an anglicized sensibility myself. So sometimes I don't notice these things. Like I'll say stuff even now, which is either Australian because I was 5 years here, or English, and people will look at me with a kind of vacant stare, trying to figure out where I'm from. So yeah, I know. I'm working on a video game right now, which is really iconically American, and the producer on it is English. And he was trying to figure out why he thought I was funny, because I was English, really. And my sensibilities are anglicized. I think that that there used to be a greater separation. Used to be a far greater separation, and that separation between English, Australian, and American cultures is getting smaller and smaller every day. The internet's responsible for a large portion of that. Part of it is the dissemination of culture. Like you guys grew up with the ABC, which is essentially an almost exact replica of how the BBC did things. The way the ABC operated as a production company and as a television entity was copied on the BBC. So you have a lot of that. So there's a lot of similarities. And and sort of different, but America sends its culture out and has been for a long time in its film and television, so the world is familiar with it. The major difference in working in Australia versus in America is that Australia has a very egalitarian kind of society. The tall poppy syndrome is actually real. They do not treat actors with any special. But there's nothing special about an actor in Australia, to be honest with you. You know, when you line up for lunch, you just line up with everybody else. In the States, it can be very different. So an actor can't, an Australian actor can't get away with the crap that an American actor can get away with on a set. You know, if you pull the big one, it's going to go badly for you. So, you know, I spent 5 years very happily, you know, being the last one in the queue for lunch. So, you know, and I love that about Australia. So everybody who was involved with Farscape had skin in the game. Everybody felt like they really wanted to be there, that they felt like their job was as important as anybody else's job. So that's the major cultural difference that I see from the working perspective. And I think it pervades Australian culture in a large way as well. That, you know, I got off the plane in Sydney yesterday, and I immediately started to relax because everybody was just more relaxed about stuff. It's not as intense. So, I mean, you know, there's a lot of cross-pollination, but you know, if I had to pick one place to work, they said, you know, you can work in one city for the rest of the year, or for the rest of your life, I would probably pick Sydney because I love it so much. Now I need to see Perth to find out whether I want to be a Perth native instead. Yeah. Sorry, long-winded answer to the question. Do you have a next question? Over there.
G'day. Love Farscape, by the way.
Thank you.
Now, in that show, like, when you look from the beginning to the end, your character kind of goes slowly crazy. Was that a acting choice, or was that just something kind of happened with the script and whatnot?
The truth about that, Crichton definitely goes insane, you know, as he goes into the second year. The truth about that is that we came back, and I figured that after everything that John had been through in the first season, like, if you took almost any one of us and you shot us to the end of the universe to be basically beaten, chased after, hunted, raped, all of these things, that you would be suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. So I basically started the second season, and I was doing stuff that was crazy. And the producer said, "Ben, what are you doing?" I go, "Well, that's because Crichton's about lost his mind." And they went, "No, he hasn't." I go, "Yeah, he's suffering big time. He's got a disorder, right?" And they argued with me, "You can't do that. You can't take the main guy in a show and make him nuts." I go, "Well, he is, so deal with it, right?" And then we did the 5th episode, Crackers Don't Matter, right? Where Crichton really goes off the rails, right? And he's seeing Scorpius, right? And so I go to the writers, I say, "Here's what it is. Crichton is imagining Scorpius, who tortured him all the time in his head." They go, "No, you can't do that." I go, "Yes, I can. He's imagining Scorpius." So I would be in a scene, you know, like in episodes after that, I'd be walking down the hall, and I'd go, stop it. And then I'd go back into the scene, right? And so about 4 or 5 episodes of me doing that stuff in a sort of a random fashion, the executive producer, David Kemper, comes up to me and goes, "I got it. Crichton's going insane because Scorpius is in his head." I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "But it's because they put a chip in his head." So it was one of those things that came together as a story point. I was trying to be creative, and the producers were responsive to the creativeness, and they were good about that in Farscape. But I honestly don't think, you know, Crichton is the audience POV, right? He is us. He is geekdom gone into space. That's as per Rock O'Bannon's design. Rock O'Bannon, the creator of Farscape, was like, "I want one of us in that situation," and they gave me the reign to be the one of us because I'm a geek, so it's good, you know. I know the references. There's not a reference in Farscape that I don't know where it comes from, and so it's you know, so if one of us got put in that situation, instead of being the stand-up heroic American model of military might abroad, it would be like, "Oh no, man!" I think that's more real. So it came from both ends, but I think it works dramatically very well. Yeah. Next question.
Hey, Ben. Hello. Ben, do you have a favorite baseball team? If not,
the Cardinals, right? Yeah.
If not, do you enjoy it, or do you get any time to get to any games of your preference sport?
I do not have a favorite baseball team. I grew up playing baseball, but it was never my best sport. So I've been to games at Dodger Stadium. I mean, you could like the Red Sox because they never won, but no, baseball. My falling out with baseball was that I just wasn't good at it. I was better at other things. I was better at like running into objects as opposed to hitting objects. So I was a football player, pole vaulter, wrestler, things like that. Yeah. Next question.
Would you like to stand up?
All right. Hey, just a quick question. You obviously meet a lot of fans around the world with different conventions and whatnot. I was wondering if you have any funny, weird, or awkward experience with a fan that you'd like to share.
Believe it or not, the awkward, weird, and funny experiences tend to be with the other actors that are backstage. I've told this story before, but I'll tell it here. I was at a convention in Germany, right? And I had an actor who was in the room next door, and he's a famous actor. He's a bit insane, and I hear, like at 4:00 in the morning, the Germans are kind of weird because I always sort of think of Germans in from movies, and that you don't have a good. If you come from an anglicized background, it's just Stuka's dive bombing, and bad things. So I think of them as a stoic people, but they're not, because they drink more than the Australians do. So in the room I was staying in, there was two hotel banks, one after another, facing each other, and at about 4 a.m, I hear hoo, ha, hoo, ha, hoo, ha, from the room next door, and the actor, who should be nameless, but he did a little show called Torchwood. Yeah, John Barrowman is staying next to me. And if you never know anything about John Barrowman, he's way out there. And Barrowman, I hear, and this is going on. I'm like, this is crazy. So I kind of go to my window, and I'm like, I'm trying to sleep. I'm jet lagged, and Barrowman's got some sort of Celtic ritual going on in the room next door. And the hotel, there's two banks of hotels, and at night, it's like a big mirror from the other side, so there's a reflection. And I can see from my room, reflected back to Barrowman's room, the window is open, and he is in there with another person, naked, both of them dancing. And it's like, they're literally, it was like a druidic ritual going on next door. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, the window's open, there's a bank of hotel on the other side. Everyone from the other side can see John Barrowman dancing naked with his Torchwood co-star. Yeah. To me, that's a little more interesting than anything. Barrowman dancing naked with his co-star in the room next door for like 3 or 4 hours till 6 a.m. And then I come in the next day, I kind of knock on the door, and he opens the door. And I go, you were a little loud last night. And he goes, oh, yeah, I'm really sorry about that. I go, and your window was open. He goes, was it? I go, yeah, I think everybody across the way could see what you were doing. He goes, wow, cool. Next question.
Hi, Ben. Huge Stargate fan. Was wondering, your character, Cam Mitchell, I was wondering if you based him off anything, what kind of research you did for him, anything like that?
The first research I did was I watched all 8 seasons of Stargate in basically one sitting. I did 8 seasons of Stargate in less than 2 weeks. Try that. Just do the math on it. So I watched the show, and then I had ideas, and I discussed them with the guys. But the Cam Mitchell was more of their creation. They wanted Mitchell to be enthusiastic and, you know, really wanting to be part of the team. So, you know, Mitchell was more theirs. Unlike Farscape, where they kind of took the reins off of me, Stargate was more like me just fitting in. And so when I showed up to do the show, it was important that I became part of the ensemble, not... I wasn't trying to replace O'Neill, you know. They already had that, and he was a producer and all that. So for Mitchell, from my standpoint, it was, you know, how do I fit in? Now, as far as research, you know, I mean, obviously you can read and do all this stuff, and they have Air Force advisors on set, right? So which is kind of cool because, you know, like my hat backwards, one of the directors said, why don't you wear your hat backwards? So I put my hat on backwards, and then as soon as the Air Force saw the footage, they're like, Ben, can you not put your hat backwards? Oh, right. Now I'm Air Force, right? Which is cool. And one of the great things about that show was getting to work with the people in the Air Force. So we got to fly with the Thunderbirds, the F-16 stunt team. So I went down with the producers and with Joe Flanagan and myself, and they put us in a two-seat F-16 and basically proceed to do everything that they know how to do in the planes, which is insane. It is, I mean, it's, you know, 9 Gs. My head then weighed like 1,000 pounds. So literally at 9 Gs, I weighed about, almost a ton, 2,000 pounds, a metric ton, yeah. So your body weighs a metric ton, and then they do stuff, they go upside down, they try to make you sick. They succeeded with one of the people. It wasn't me. I won't name who that person was. They got sick. But I did give you names earlier. You have to ferret it back out. And then at the end of this, so I was telling the Air Force, I said, you know, look, here's the thing. Anything you guys want, at this point, after you've given me a ride in an F-16, anything you want, it's yours. You can have it. I said, I'll do anything for you guys, especially if I get another ride in an F-16. What I didn't realize was that, you know, a decade later, my son is going to the Air Force Academy next year. They wanted my firstborn son. And I was talking, he's going to play football at Air Force. And I was talking to one of the coaches. I said, you know, I never figured that when I gave the Air Force a blank check, they'd be asking for my child. And he goes, yeah, the government, you do take a bite. So be careful what you promise any governmental agency because they'll be after your children next. Next question. Yes.
Hi, Ben.
Hi.
Huge fan of Farscape, by the way. I really liked the relationship between Aaron and John because it was very endearing and challenging, and in all, they helped each other grow and develop as much stronger together than separate. What was your favourite scene between the two with, like, Claudia Black?
My favourite scene with Claudia Black, well, there's an entire episode where they were kissing, but that's an episode actually that never made it into my house, by the way. Normally I would get, like, the dailies and rushes. I would take them home with me and watch them. I didn't take any of those home. My favorite scene is the coin toss scene from the end of season 3, where Aaron is deciding to go or not to go. And that was one of those that went through like 20 different versions in the draft, you know, of how they were going to do this. And Aaron deciding to go, how was she going to decide to go? And it's actually Claudia's idea to turn it into a coin flip. And I thought that worked really, really well. But I love that scene. It was a great day on set, and I think the scene plays beautifully. And, you know, she's just a magnificent actress. So, you know, that would be my favorite scene. That and Crichton's death scene. I love that one where Crichton dies. You know, the real John Crichton, you know, in the middle of season 3, Crichton dies of radiation poisoning, and Claudia was literally just sobbing over the top of me, and she leans down to kiss me, kissing my dying body, and like snot is pouring out of her nose, and so she pulls away from me, and there's strings of snot coming off my face. That's real. That's real acting. Real drama. It was awesome, yeah. But a lot of that is just, Claudia Black is a magnificent actress. She is a magnificent Australian actress who is underappreciated in her own country. You really need to find a way to get her back here to, do some work for Channel 9 or something, Well, whatever, But she should be working all the time. And I know she's in the States. Claudia's doing The Originals, which is the CW spinoff of some vampire thing. She'll be brilliant. But she needs to be back here gracing your screens on a daily basis. So, get a petition going. Find somebody to force her to come back to Australia and work for you guys. Next question.
Oh, sorry. Hello. I know you've worked with a lot of amazing people, Claudia Black being one of them, and I love her too. Is there anyone that you haven't worked with that you really, really want to, whether that's in film or TV in the future?
Wow. Yeah, there's lots of people I'd love to work with. Like all of George Clooney's clan, in every George Clooney movie, like Soderbergh, all those guys, I think, yeah, Ocean's 25, I want to be in that. Me, Matt Damon, and Brad Pitt in an old folks' home. There's so many magnificent actors. I mean, there's lots of English actors that I would love to work with. There's a laundry list, absolute laundry list of actors. I think talented and truly amazing actors are they're kind of everywhere, but they're rare. Do you know what I mean? They're like one of those things that they exist all over the world, but they're like diamonds. They're rare things. They're not. There's a lot of actors, and there's some very, very good ones, but then there's those ones that are just special, like Judi Dench. All right, Judi Dench directed my last show at drama school, and when she would be giving direction, and we were doing the Scottish play, and she would just pick up the words and she would just read a scene, and that's better than anything I've ever heard in my life. She is so exquisite at everything she does that you watch her and go, oh my gosh, can I go home with you? I'll sleep on the mat out by the front door. She's just amazing woman as well. So now there's a lot of people, but yeah, Judi Dench and Brad Pitt. How about that? It's a good combination. It's kind of got a little range there. Next question.
As a budding scriptwriter, do you have any tips on getting into the industry?
Of getting into the industry?
Yeah.
That's a really, really difficult question to answer. My daughter is, she's actually working her way into the industry. So she's doing internships. She is producing web series, writing and producing web series. She has a web series called Jules and Monty. Jules and Monty, it's a college version of Romeo and Juliet that she did last year, which is shot webcam style. That's helped her open doors. It also got a mention in The Guardian as one of the 5 best adaptations of classical works on the web. But she did it with just, the university resources at the university she's at, outside of classes, outside of all this, just gathered some people and did it. There really may be, in this day and age, no substitute to going, hey, I got a camera, I've got a story to tell, how do you tell the story? Other than that, I mean, as far as, but here's the other thing, which is, I'll tell you the scariest thing that I heard from my daughter last summer. She was working at a major producers on the Warner Brothers lot. She was an intern. And so she's a rising junior in college with no professional credits to her resume. And she's a very smart girl. And she's been around the industry since she was yay big. So, she has a lot of advantages that way. But she's working as an intern, and the first thing they do is they teach them how to get the coffee order right and how to turn the light on. And by day 3, they had her reading scripts and doing coverage on scripts, which means that lots of scripts get sent out to producers, and the first line of defense was a college kid with no professional credits going yes or no to the script. And that was the most frightening thing that I could think of. You know, like she would have said no to my scripts, you know. But it requires a lot of luck. It requires being in the right place at the right time, and it requires talent. So if you have talent, then you just have to stay at it until you're standing in the right place at the right time, or the right person reads your words and goes, "Ooh, I want to do that." And the other alternative is you find somebody that loves your stuff and goes, "Okay, we're going to make this, and this becomes my calling card." So make a short film. Do that. It's doable these days. It's not like trying to make a short film 30 years ago where you had to shoot on film and you had to have all these resources. You could make a web series with your friends for a few $100, and you put it on YouTube. And if it gets a lot of YouTube hits, it may not be what you do, it may not be what you're interested in, but it can be done. So I would say, depending on what your scripts are like, you know, find a way to just get it made. Just get it made, because someone may look at it and love it, and then the next thing you know, you're going to be standing at the Oscars, or you'll be able to give me a job. Which is the goal, of course. My goal with my daughter is for her to be fully employing me within 5 years. It's true. It's payback for all that education that we gave her. Next question.
Hi, welcome to Perth. Going back to Farscape, I'm really curious about the relationship between Crichton and Chiana.
The relationship between Crichton and Chiana?
Yeah.
It's one of those that would have turned sexual if it hadn't been kind of a brother-sister sort of vibe, because then that really would have been icky. You know what? I actually think if Aaron hadn't been in the way, it would have turned into a really, really bad dalliance. You know what I mean? Because that's how Chiana operated. She was sexy, you know. She showed up and was like, "Oh my gosh, where'd that tart come from?" But you know, as it progressed, it was more a brother sister kind of feel, you know. She was the daughter you hoped you never had, the sister you shook your head at, and the girlfriend you always wanted when you were young. Next question.
I was just wondering if you'd be putting your hand up for Conman Series 2 and share some of your funny convention stories there.
Have I been putting my hand up for what?
Conman Series 2, if they make it.
Yeah, my hand's up. I'm particularly now that my kids are. Now that my son is 6'5" and going off to the Air Force to protect me, I really want to be back to work. There was a period of time when I was going back and forth from Canada to the U.S. when it wasn't a good time to move my kids around. That's one of the great things about my job is that I'm here and I'm there and I'm around the world. The bad thing about the job is when you're trying to raise a family and you've got, you know, a 9-year-old boy and a 12-year-old girl, you need to be at home. If you're doing it right, you need to be at home. Dad needs to be there. And when Dad's only there like for a day and a half every 2 weeks for extended periods of time, it didn't suit me well at all, and it didn't work for my family. So I made a decision that I'm not going to leave home, and I'm not going to uproot my kids while they're going through primary school or at least through secondary school. When they got to that middle school age, like 12, 13, you don't want to move them around. You want to give them some stability. And if you're not home as a dad, and I realize that it has to be done in instances and occasions, but we had enough leeway that I could say, I'm going to be home. So I didn't want to be in South Africa or New York or Toronto or Atlanta, Georgia, when my kids were living somewhere in California. So I made a decision that I wouldn't take work out of town. And I don't regret that decision, but it limits your choices as an actor when very little production goes on in Los Angeles. So now that my kids are here, yeah, I would happily go to Charlotte, North Carolina, where they shoot Homeland, which is my hometown, and spend months at a time doing it. So yeah, I'm just kind of up for working right now. The thing about directing a movie for the first time, which I did last summer, it absolutely made me fall in love with my business again. Because you do something for a while, you know, as an actor, you get a lot of rejection. You get this, and you get those moments where you're working, where you love it. But the vast majority of an actor's life is being told no. It's like, no, too tall, too short, too old, not good enough, not bad. You know, whatever it is, you're never quite enough. So you spend a lot of time being rejected. I have thousands and thousands of auditions and interviews where you get told no. And you can't, it's not like being a salesman where you're selling cars and you can go, yeah, you know what, really, that Manara sucks, right? No. It's you are the car, you are the product. So you endure a lot of rejection. As you discover when you write scripts, you're personally invested in that script. And when they reject the script, it's like they've rejected you, right? It's not like you're selling a handbag made in Italy or China. They're rejecting your work. So that part of it's really hard. But when I directed this last summer, I fell in love with the business again. I had a bunch of 18-year-old kids. I had a cast of high school kids, and instead of casting 26 to play 18, I cast 18-year-olds. Some of them had never been in front of a camera saying words in their life. They're all really talented. But it was so exciting to direct them, and then the process of putting it all together and weaving and telling a story again and being deeply integrated into telling a story was so exciting again, as opposed to just being an actor standing and saying words that someone has for you. And so I'm so excited to be back at work in any capacity that, yes, I will do Homeland. Yeah. What? Yeah, that too. I thought you said Homeland. Cockman.
Yeah.
Yes.
G'day, Ben. I thought you were fantastic in Stargate, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Can you share with us some of your more memorable moments with the cast of Stargate, any of the funny things happening behind the scenes?
Yeah, you know, I mean, any Stargate story inevitably devolves into a Chris Judge story. And I've told the story before, so if you've heard it before, don't get too bored. But very early on in the show, I had an intimate moment with Chris Judge. I think it's the end of the first episode. So second episode, we're in a room. The ceiling is coming down, right? So the ceiling is lowering, and I'm trying to solve a puzzle, and the ceiling's getting lower and lower and lower, right? So they're shooting it from outside, and they start lowering the ceiling, and the ceiling's coming down, and it's getting tighter and tighter, and Chris and I are getting on the ground, and then I see Chris Judge reaching for his belt, and he's undoing his pants. I don't know Chris at this point. All I know is here is a large black man undoing his trousers while I'm in an enclosed space, which is getting smaller and smaller by the moment, right? And I see him dropping his trowel as the ceiling is coming down, but I'm supposed to be in shot, and we're supposed to be in shot together, and he's got his, oh no, right? So the ceiling gets about this high, and we're crouched down, and Judge is over there with no pants on. The door opens, there's the camera, and there's Chris Judge exposing fully himself to the camera crew. That was my first episode. The last episode, or second to last movie, so here, we're stuck. It's the one where we're stuck on the ship. Where we're stuck on the ship forever and ever. I think it's the last episode of Stargate. And again, here's Chris Judge, right? Amanda Tapping has this incredibly emotional scene. She's crying. Oh, it's awful. And she's going to Teal'c's room. She walks down the hallway, walking to Teal'c's room for comfort because Landry has died and we're aging slowly. And she's coming in and she's bawling. It's a brilliant performance, right? And the door opens and there's Chris Judge in a thong. And when I say thong, I don't mean flip-flops, with a jewel-encrusted SG-1 logo. Just a black thong with SG-1 on it. Well, yeah. So, yeah, inevitably, those stories become Chris Judge stories. Yeah, he was an entertaining man. Next question. Wait. Here or there? Sorry, you're next. Yes.
Hi, Ben. So when you were in Farscape, Crichton and Aaron had this amazing chemistry. But then what was it like when you went to Stargate and Vala was all over Daniel? Was that weird?
It was difficult for me. I've said this before, but I'll tell you this too. I could not understand how Vala shows up in that red underwear, is on Daniel Jackson's bed, and he comes in and says no. I saw that scene. I went to the producer and said, Mitchell will do it for the team. Because apparently the internet rumors are true about Daniel Jackson. I don't know how Mike let that one slide. I'm like, dude, man, she's not in the military. You're not in the military. There's no rules against this. What is wrong with Daniel Jackson? I volunteered, but they said no. Mission went somewhere else. Next question.
Hi. I was just wondering, because you work in a lot of sci-fi, what's it like working with green screens and animatronics and puppets?
Puppets are great to work with. They're better than a lot of actors. Not the really good ones, but the puppeteers, puppets are fantastic to work with. You get your hands on them, you know. You can kiss them. You can do all kinds of crazy things with puppets. I'm sure there's stuff on the internet that I don't want to know about. Green screens are a bit like stage work. That, you know, when you're doing a play and you come to do your soliloquy, or you imagine stuff, right? Oh, the vast armies, these lofty fields of France, you know, and all that wonderful stuff. Yeah, so, you know, you're sort of, green screen requires you to imagine. The problem is that you have to time it up with the camera, and so there'd be someone with a little silver ball going, okay, here's the monster, as you go there, and you're going, you know, and then they put in something that looks really bad, and then you look like an idiot. So there's an advantage to the puppets, because you know what the puppets look like, right? But green screen's a little more imagination, and, you know, you're kind of like, okay, so where's the X? What am I looking at? Here's our eye line, and the guy next to you going, so where are we looking? Where is that? There's a lot of that, though, these days. I mean, there's so much green screen component and so much visual effects which is done. It's really rather amazing. And then do you want to go the next step on? Right now I'm working on a video game, which I am not allowed to talk to because they basically have, like, a hit squad that comes out and kills you if you talk about what you're working on. They make you sign an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, and they're serious about it. They're really serious about it, and they're a big enough company that, you know, I might not make it out of Australia alive if I talked about it here. I'll be able to talk about it as soon as they announce, but it's a really big video game, right? It's huge. The technology on that stuff is beyond the pale interesting, because I come into work and I get into like a clown suit, a tight-fitting spandex jobby with like little reflectors on it. Then they put 140 reflectors on my face, right? And then we go out and we do scenes in a place which is, the room is about the size of this room here. It has 400 and something cameras in a 360, and I go in with actors and we play these scenes, and they take the information, they take all the data from the facial data, from the body, they plug it into the machine, they throw in the overlays, and it's like, oh damn, that's me. And it's like the technology is getting so much better and so much better. And the really cool thing is that I'm watching some of this stuff, and it's like, it's me, but it's like me at 27. I'm like, yeah, the fountain of youth. All right, woohoo! I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. So yeah, I didn't really answer your question, but I got to tell about my, you know, my video game thing, which I almost slipped out right there. I was not gonna make it out of the country alive. Next question.
Yes, welcome to Perth.
Thank you.
I was wondering, I guess, going way back, when you decided to become an actor, why you've decided to become an actor, and if you hadn't become an actor, what you might have gone through to do instead. Okay,
good question. Why did I decide? I decided to become an actor because I'm not very smart. No, because I live under this kind of principle that do what you want to do. Try to do anything. Be fearless. Fail gloriously. I try to live my life that way. That I've always sort of thought, oh, I can do anything. That's a really stupid idea. I can't, obviously, but I sort of lived that way. And so I was in college. I was playing American football. I was playing gridiron, and I was going to school, and I was getting ready to go into the Air Force. I had signed up to go to OCS. I was going to fly jets. That was my plan. And about 2 weeks before I was supposed to sign the documents, I'd taken all the tests and done all the physicals and done all that stuff. I got talked into taking an acting course, and because I was taking an English class. Says, no, we need an extra guy for this acting class. And I've been doing plays and theater and stuff on and off my whole life, but I never thought about it as a career. Let's be honest. Out of Charlotte, North Carolina in the 80s, no dude became an actor. That's insane, right? You just don't do that, right? And it wasn't on my radar. And so I was taking this acting class, and the RSC was on tour, and they would give these symposium lectures, and then you would do scene work with the RSC. So I did scene work with members of the RSC that whole week, and I watched them, and I took some of the actors to this football party where there's like kegs of beer and big beefy blokes, throwing couches through windows. And while they were really hammered one night, they were pissed as newts. And I asked one of them, I said, do you think I can make a living as an actor? And they said, oh, yeah. And so I went, oh, yeah, okay, that's what I'll do. That was literally my thinking process. I called my mom and dad. I said, I'm going to be an actor. What? Now I'm being an actor. My mom was supportive. My dad goes, well, you probably need something to fall back on. And I said, no, I don't want anything to fall back on because I reckon if it gets hard, I'll fall back on it. So I'm just going to do it. So that's what I did. I got real lucky, too, though, by the way. Yes. Next question. Wait.
There we go. They've turned it on. That's all we've got time for.
Well, no, we're going to take this last question because she's
ready.
ready.
One more?
Yeah, one more.
Yeah?
One more question. Yes.
Coming into Perth, WA, can I just say sorry for the bad weather? It's never like this. But have you ever been in Australia for a holiday or a longer period of time to appreciate Australia?
I don't know if 5 years in Australia is enough to appreciate it because it's a really big-ass country. I lived in Sydney for almost 5 years, so I have an appreciation of New South Wales culture. I've seen a fair portion of that. I haven't seen nearly enough of the rest of Australia. In answer to the weather, I haven't seen the weather because I got off a plane. I'm still jet lagged, so when you see me kind of fade off into the distance, it's because my soul is trying to catch up with me. Honestly, when I left Australia, we tried to immigrate to Australia. We went and got the paperwork, and they told me no. They said, no, you don't have any skills. And you're too old. I had turned 40. I was over 40 when I left Australia, and I had no skill, which kind of tells you about my stupid career choices, right? If I had been a bricklayer, a taxi driver, could run the till at a shop, bunch of numbers, then I could have immigrated to Australia if I had been a few years younger. But literally the Australian government told me no. Thank you for your service and your time in New South Wales. Please leave the country, Mr. Browder. Having said that, every time I'm here, I think, oh, I want to live in Australia. And, I would love to spend a month in a camper van with a surfboard on top, just seeing the entire coastline of Western Australia. You guys have a magnificent country. You are a magnificent people. And every time I come here, I almost want to cry at how much I love being here. Thank you for having me here. Hopefully, I'll see some more of you this weekend. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Ben Browder, ladies and gentlemen.